Hi, everybody. I'm Lesley Wexler, and I'm the host of the Writers Group. It is part of an organization called Project Positive Change. It's where visionaries and heartfelt entrepreneurs spread positive vibes in the world. And part of that is our Writers Group, and we all try to share and bounce ideas off of each other, help each other over the mountain of writing and through the mountain of writing. I am so pleased to have as my guest Pete Cossaboon, who's known as the Angel Encourager. He is an angelic intuitive medium. His clients have experienced physical, mental, emotional healing, leading to an increase in joy, tranquility, and overall wellness. His spiritual connection, combined with his voracious appetite in studying quantum physics, which I love, and his degree in mathematics has given him a view of the world that makes his teachings relevant and timely. Believing this world is starving for leaders, he has taken on the role of a mentor to teach and heal a world in pain and suffering. Welcome, Pete. I am so happy you're here.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on the show.
You know, I want to say that I'm so excited about quantum because I grew up in a family of artists and physicists. And so my dad, he was kind of a mentor to me. He is, I would say, the epitome of love. I mean, I learned that growing up. And he was very spiritual. He was religious, but spiritual. And I asked him one time, I said, you know, Dad, how do you believe in all this stuff? I mean, how do you rectify the science with the spirituality? And he said, you know, there are just things in this world that cannot be explained. And I just love that as a 14-year-old to understand that in a simple terms. So I want to ask you, you've gone from mathematician to angel encourager. What is there a pivotal moment in your life that that just brought you to this place where you said, aha, I get it?
Well, I always knew that age 50 was going to be a game changer for me. When I was 44, I went through a dark night of the soul and almost attempted suicide, which is, I'm now part of Emerging Proud's suicide book, which was amazing to me. The amazing thing about that was I think they told me to write 700 words. And one day I just sort of sat down, started typing, and I could tell I was in the flow, and I stopped and I did a word count, and it was 700 words. So I knew that that was just spirit-led, that the story that I had written, and I couldn't change anything, right? So it was just amazing. But when I was, and I didn't really know what they kept, or what I kept, that feeling I knew of that year 50 was going to be a game changer really meant. You know, basically I lost everything in my mid 40s. And I always say that's the most amazing thing that could ever happen to me, because I just basically made a decision of, if you've lost everything, then there's nothing left to lose, and why don't you just go for it? So I started to learn who I was. I started to become very authentic and to really do a study and a path of, if life isn't the 5-bedroom home and the perfect career and the blah, 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 then what is it? What is it all about? Because I'd had all those things and none of it had made me happy. In fact, I was the most depressed, anxious person you'd ever meet in your entire life. 320 pounds, suicidal, the whole 9 yards. And so I really went on this path. I discovered Abraham Hicks, and I read The Secret and got a life coach, and as one does, and she put me into a mastermind group. And one of the ladies in the mastermind group was an angelic intuitive medium. And I said to her, I said, you know, would you teach me? And I just had this attitude of like, it'd be kind of cool to be intuitive. That was just sort of my idea. And up to that point, I really I had feelings and things, but I wouldn't have said that I was one that was really connected or one that really got signs or anything like that. Now that I think back, I think of things that, you know, were obvious that I just didn't see as obvious, you know, at the time. So basically she started training me, and then in our second training, she just stopped and she said, you know, I have nothing else to teach you. And I said, why? And she said, because you're already doing it. And I was just really confused. But then all of a sudden I started just getting like these Facebook messages from people and emails from people, and people I didn't even really know, people that like had maybe heard of me through someone else. And they were like coming to me with, you know, I have this health issue. Can you help me with it? I'm like, I don't know. Let's give it a shot. You know, I have this negative energy in my home. Can you help me with it? I'm like, I don't know. Let's give it a shot. You know, and I mean, that's basically was my attitude toward it. And really with really no formal training whatsoever, I always tell people I'm just a great allower. There's nothing special about me. And I would just basically do or say or whatever I was intuited to do. And it just, would have these amazing things happen for people. And then about a year later, I started working with another lady, very powerful psychic or medium in Canada. And the second lesson she stopped and she said, I have nothing else to teach you. And I was like, why? And she said, because you're more powerful than I am. And I was like, what do you mean I'm more powerful than you are? And then she asked me to help her with, there was a dark spirit in her home that was attacking her 3-year-old son. And so, about 15, 20 minutes after we just I did whatever they told me to do, the spirit was gone and it hasn't ever been back. And like I say, there's nothing special about me. Is that I have no ego in this whatsoever. It's just about, but I do feel like it's been an amazing gift that's been given to me, that it would be a shame and really honestly a sin if I did not exercise it and use it and grow it the best way that I can. And I asked the angels, I was like, so why at the age of 50 do I go from basically 0 to 100? What is this all about? And they said, we don't want you to have any preconceived ideas, and we don't want you to be afraid of anything. We want you just to show up as raw and fresh and just believe whatever, we tell you to do. And the interesting thing of it is that as I've gone along and as I've done more studying and had other mentors and things, they've taught me methods, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I've already been doing. I realized that that's what they'd already had told me to do, was pretty much what, is like right on that same wavelength and pretty much those same methods. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's just given me a great deal of life. And I thought it was really interesting what you were saying at the beginning, Lesley, when you talked about the idea and the concept that your dad was saying about, there's many unknowns. The biggest question I have right now to spirit is that as we discover new things like about ourselves, about quantum physics and about spirituality, are we actually creating that in the moment? Like, it seems like every time we learn something or we get to a new understanding, we almost think, oh, this is it. Like this is, we have met the apex, we have met the edge, right? And then of course we find out there's another edge. And I'm wondering if we actually did meet the edge, but because we're voracious, we had this voracious appetite to learn and to grow and to expand. I'm wondering if we create a larger edge. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I always say that us humans have pea brains. But because I think a lot of things get in the way, like, language gets in the way. And the fact that you say that you're just sort of there, you're kind of a conduit and you're just in the present moment, there's no attachment. So there's no mind talk. There's no preconceived notions. Do we create a bigger edge? I don't know. Maybe in every particular moment we do. And so as we have this attachment to all of these angels and these guides and these things that we can tap into, perhaps they're just saying, it's really just about life and, and what you make of it. And perhaps we have this resource, and if it's useful, I don't know, I'd like to pretend I have all the answers, but I don't. But I love that you go in and you really are there just there for the purpose of being there. You're not there for any other reason. And I also love that that you were a student and you're a teacher now. I think we're all students and teachers at different in different ways and different means.
Absolutely. The Course of Miracles really teaches that in order to be a good student, you have to be a good teacher. That you have to teach as you go along. And that's really, it's interesting. That's when you really learn it, is when you teach it, because then you start to, you get to that edge of what and then you think, oh, there's got to be more. So then you begin to do more studying and things like that. But you said something about wanting all the answers. And what I've really discovered, it's the quest isn't in the answers, it's in the questions, right? Because every time I ask a question, I always get 20 more questions than that come up. And that's what I love.
I love that because I ask questions all the time and the universe always answers them with another question. And I love that. Yeah. But it is good because it gives you the answers within,
Oh yeah. If you'll ask a question, then just get quiet, you're going to get the answer in some shape, way, or form. Sometimes we don't understand it or don't hear it, but it's always being presented to us, in every moment for sure.
I wanted to ask you a question about the Emerging Proud Through Suicide. I'm going to read the title here. Emerging Proud Through Suicide, Stories of Hope and Transformation. There was about 16 people that took part in this collaborative book. I always
Mm.
am amazed. My mother went through lifetime depression, and that really affects the family as well. But I'm always amazed at people who are able to bring out their stories, to bring it from their inner circle out there. And it's a great thing because there's so many people that need to feel that they're not alone in the world, and need to know that that there's a way out of it. So I was wondering how you were able to get yourself to be vulnerable and to share the story.
You know, just the next morning when I survived, I mean, I didn't actually make the attempt. Basically, I was standing at the garage door with a bottle of Southern Comfort and 4 bottles of pills. Anybody out there with something, just don't judge me for the Southern Comfort. But anyway, and I, you know, I already had the playlist set up, and I was just going to climb into my PT Cruiser, turn on the air conditioner, and just, you know, zone out. And what stopped me was Spirit kept saying to me, there's something really cool around the corner that you're going to miss out on. I didn't know what that was. And I also just kept knowing it was going to be my daughter that was going to discover me. And I just, you know, I could not let that happen. I could not stand the thought
Mm.
of that being her last image of her father. And so I always, when people ask me, who are your heroes? It's always my daughter and my fitness trainer. Those are my two heroes for sure. So I went into like this desperate mode of wanting to survive. You know what I mean? It's just like my body was trying to take me out to the car, and and my brain was too, but my spirit just was like, no, you can't do this. And I called the suicide helpline 4 times, and each time they hung up on me.
Oh my gosh.
All I said was, I need hope. And the next thing I would hear a dial tone. And so I don't know what was up there, but I did a Google search. I mean, I'm drunk as a skunk, as they say, you know, because I'd already, of course, had downed a bottle of Southern Comfort just to get me to that courage level. And I just Googled suicide helpline, and I found a phone number for some emergency room in Tennessee. And I talked to some angel there for about 3 hours. And just having that human connection, just having someone that would talk to me, you know, and he did never say like, don't do it, or he just was there for me, right? He just let me say whatever I needed to say. He was just there. So the next morning, you know, when I sort of, you know, got my act together and went on with whatever I had to do, I already was vulnerable. Like I just was already there. And I found out that the interesting thing about it is, if you lead with the most embarrassing or the biggest, if you lead with your biggest thing to you with other people, not everybody, but those that need to know, you'll find out that they'll immediately like come to your aid, and they'll tell you, oh, well, that's just not that big of a deal. Or, you know, I understand. Or even when I was applying for jobs, if I told them the entire truth, they hired me, and they told me they probably would not have hired me if I had not done it. So, you know, that
Interesting.
the keeping it secret, those secrets, they're a dark, fearful place that just does nothing but diminish you, because you're either decreasing or increasing. You're never staying the same. You're doing one or the other. But as you shine a light on that darkness, it's amazing how it heals it. And it took years. Believe me, it took a lot of years for healing. But I could like sense it or see it, if that makes any sense. I could see the tail of it anyway, right? At some point.
Somebody obviously wanted to help you, and it's almost as if they sent you to the right person too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, because it is very vulnerable, but I always think of vulnerability as strength. But there are a lot of people out there that are afraid to tell their story, or afraid they tell people, but they don't write about it, or they don't tell the public about it. It takes a lot of courage for them.
Yeah, and you have to be very careful about it. I mean, I was you know, abused as a child, and so in my 20s, my mother came to me and she asked me. She was like, "Why have you divorced the family?" And I was like, "Do you really want to know?" And she said, "Yes." And I told her, and her response to me was, "I can't wrap my brain around that." And that was even more hurtful to me than
Yeah,
anything else. It was just this whole, so you need to be careful really about, just when I say being vulnerable and telling your truth, that doesn't mean you need to put a billboard out there. You need to be very conscious of the people that you are. And when at the very beginning, I mean, when I was vulnerable to very specific people, therapists, very, very, very close friends, but you don't want to like overwhelm people, and you don't want to be talking about the same story over and over and over again. Anytime you talk about your past or anything like that, watch yourself, because you will notice if you're really conscious of it when you're telling your story. Is this something that's expanding me or contracting me? Am I holding myself back in it, or am I feeling more empowered? And then the empowerment can be in simply a sense of anger that says, never again will this happen to me, and never again will I allow anybody else to go through this either. And that can be a very, anger is a great way to get out of depression. It's an amazing way. So I think it's really been discounted in our world today, the idea of anger, because it makes people uneasy because what's going to happen, because it's a lot of energy. But it's a great way to get yourself out of depression, and to move yourself to the next level.
Yeah, release, right? It's sort of like that movie broadcast. Was it Broadcast News, or it was one of those news?
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yes, and it's a release, and in healing, being a conduit. I always say I'm a conduit for self-healing, because it's really up to the person. But in going through some things, the messages that I get for other people, I always feel that it's a parallel to what I should listen to. And I also feel that being vulnerable and saying I'm going through this, or I've been through this, is a very helpful to people, to help them understand that you're one of them. You're not, you don't have all the answers, but here's what you're doing. Or so do you feel that that's part of it's part of how you help people in healing?
So one of the most important lessons I've recently, and this has been very recently, learned about being a healer and healing. I mean, yes, as you say, it has to be up to the other person, because a lot of times people will put themselves in a sick or diseased state as a way to keep themselves small. It becomes their story, it becomes their excuse, right? So a lot of people don't want to be healed, to be honest. And there's no judgment on that, just it is what it is. But as a healer, you need to really work on the idea of non-attachment. And this has really been shown to me by some other people that are doing masterminds. Nick Burrow is one, where people can tell you these really just terrible situations and these terrible things that are happening to them. And it's not that you don't have compassion for that person, but you don't step into the story, right? Because if you step into the story of the person that needs healing, you capacitate them to stay, you facilitate them in staying there. So you have to stay non-attached to it and not allow that to really attach to yourself or anything else. Because for a long time, as I would heal, I would literally, so many things would happen to me physically afterwards. I even remember I had a friend that was in hospice probably about 6 months ago, and I was physically ill for like 30 days. I mean, I went to 3 doctors. I mean, I felt like I was dying. I really did. And I think it was because I allowed this, not that I wanted to be there for him, but there was like this attachment that I sort of took it into myself. So I think it's very important that you take on this idea of non-attachment. I think we think in the light and love community that's a sense of not loving someone else, is when we don't allow them to sort of dump on us, or don't allow for others' energy to seep into ours. But you can't what you're doing then is you're bending over to pull somebody up. And when you bend over like that, what happens is you get pulled down too, and then you can't help anybody, right?
I resonate with that. I've been there, and it's really a process of setting boundaries. It doesn't mean you're any less compassionate. It just, as an empath, it's a difficult for empaths to learn how to set boundaries.
It is, unless you sort of set the intention for it. Because I would have said the same thing before, but when I let go of the guilt of non-attachment, I understood that actually the greatest compassion is to be non-attached, because that's the only way you can truly help someone. And that's the only way that you can keep yourself whole, so that you can help other people. I almost felt like it was my duty, to suffer along with them and to feel the pain. But that was my own story, right? That was my own way to suffer and my own way to be small. You know what I mean? So it's interesting, as I'm trying to help somebody else expand, I'm making myself smaller. We're interesting human beings. We're interesting little creatures, aren't we?
Yes. I mean, no, that's great advice, Pete, really seriously, to really, that you're attached to your story a little bit there, and that you are, and the transition is you have to release the guilt, because that's not going to do either one of you good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great advice. Great advice. Um,
Mm.
well, in the writers group, there's so many things that that we use writing for, like for our business, for books. Sometimes it doesn't have to be. I think people in the wellness, especially, feel that they have to write a book. They don't always have to write a book. Sometimes they can teach other ways. And you've been doing a lot of teaching on Udemy. In particular, right? And there's here, I've got the list here. It says Radical Spirituality with the Cardinal Angels, the Angels of Meditation, the Chakras and the Angels of Abundance are some of the courses that you offer on Udemy. And I was wondering if you had any advice to people about, there's so much knowing inside, there's so many things that can be brought out. Were there hurdles that you had to go through to create these courses, or do you feel like, I guess, give us some tips about how we can translate some of our ideas into classes?
Sure. So, I mean, it comes up to the old basic of who am I to teach? Also knowing that you're going to get somebody that's going to be a detractor. You're going to get people that aren't going to like what you do, but look at the 9 people that love it and just kind of take in the one person that didn't and see if there's anything in there, or if not, then, maybe it's something to be worked on. The other thing, in this day and age, there's so much out there. It's time to get specific. I mean, there was a time for us to talk about these broad sort of spiritual things. Now it's time to get very, very specific and get with something that you have personally experienced. I mean, all light and love, but I see so many people that step into it. They read a book on whatever it is, abundance or something like that, or building a business or a heart-centered business. And the next thing they know, they're going to be a business coach, and you're asking them, have you ever built a successful heart-centered business? I mean, have you done this? And you find out that they're just regurgitating the words that they've already heard. And it comes through like that. You just hear the same phrases and the same lessons that you hear from everyone else. And it's not nuanced. It's not fresh. It really doesn't even have any energy to it, right? But there's something that they personally have experienced and they've personally triumphed over. But it can be very vulnerable and very scary to talk about that. But that is where the meat is. That's where the juice is at, right? So I work on, I'm constantly looking for things of, yes, I'd love to be able to be better at this right here, but have I actually had any triumph or had any success in it? And it's not that, it's levels. Like you could be a business coach and maybe you haven't attained superstar status according to the world, but perhaps you have had some success. So work on the success that you have had. Maybe it's a particular kind of business or a particular aspect of the business that you're really good, like copywriting or building a website or whatever it might be. But I think that people really need to, number one, become very specific and then be very core to their own message of what have you gone through, what have you personally done, because that's the juice and the meat that's going to connect with other people. Because I mean, honestly, if you had enough energy into something, you could just write down blah, 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 blah. But if you, I mean, literally BLAH, BLAH, BLAH. But if you had the right energy behind it, somebody would get something out of it. It's not so much the words or the methods or the whatever, that makes a difference for people. It's the energy that you pack into it, right? And that's,
It's like the present moment, right? Being right there while you're doing it. It's something innately, right? And
yeah, and that packs into whatever you write or your courses or anything. It goes into your videos. You can watch 2 videos and one they're saying exactly the same words, but one's so infused with passion and with energy, and it moves you, and the other one just falls flat. And it's about what's been put into it, right?
Exactly. And I do think that people are looking for tools, and one tool may not work for them, but another one might resonate with them. And they're just looking for their own tools, really. It might be a mixed match of this tool from this person and this tool from that person.
Yeah. And also, of course, there are things that like maybe you've learned it from this person and then you've nuanced it for yourself and you've twisted around, because a lot of times, it's the 10th time you've heard something from the 10th person before it really makes sense. So I don't want to stop anybody from doing anything. Just make sure it's really your word, your language, and that you've actually experienced it. Does that make sense?
No, definitely. It's definitely resonates. And because one thing I was going to mention is I had done this workshop before online, and I had packed all the stuff into this one workshop, everything I know.
Mm.
And then I realized later in looking back, oh my gosh, so this should be like 5, 6, 7,
Mm.
8 workshops. Not that you want to water down something, but you realize that there's just so much to say about all these little things. Have you
Mhm.
ever experienced that, or how do you go about, you know,
Well, that's that whole lack consciousness. I mean, I'm not saying, but you know where I'm coming at from that. That's that idea of I don't really have anything impactful to say. I mean, I know the mindset because I've stepped in it myself. So I'm speaking as me. When you try to just pack it full of all the little, all the good gold. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But you have to sort of like lead people up, and you have to understand that people have a rhythm, right? If you just overwhelm them with stuff. I mean, there's some books that I've read, like The Course in Miracles is one of them. It is so dense. And when I say dense, it's because like every word has an impact. So you have to like take your
Right.
time with books like that. And when you're doing like videos and things like that, people can't do it. They can't take it in. The brain, the human conscious brain can only take in 4 things at one time. And you probably have the spouse or the kids yelling in the other room, and maybe somebody's making popcorn, and so you get your brain's kind of going all over the place, and then something really, maybe the cat jumped up on your lap, and then what I mean, and you're kind of thinking, oh, next week I got to start my taxes, and then you're trying to
And the
think about this
auditory
really
part,
dense thing.
do you feel that the auditory part is very difficult for people? That's why you have to slow it down. I think it just makes sense because you're more present when you do it that way as
Right.
well, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And people want to see, like I say, it's the energy. So you looking into the camera and people seeing your eyes, even if it's recorded, they still can connect, with that other human voice that has experienced whatever it is they're experiencing, but has gone through it and shows how they've gone through it. Right.
Right, exactly. Now you have all sorts of things. I'm amazed with you because I have all these ideas floating around my head, and I'm having a hard time finishing anything. You have a book that you're giving away, and I forgot to mention it in the beginning of this video because I wanted to, entice people right away. But there's a book called 4 Steps to Brilliance. Is that the book
Mhm.
that you have? You want to show it?
So yeah, it's a very small book, and I mean, I probably shouldn't label it small, but it is. It's just it's was really sort of the basis or the beginning of how I learned to raise my vibration. It was something that came to me, and so this is it right here. It's 4 Steps to Brilliance. I've self-published it myself. It's Life Design Made Easy, and I just decided, just to make myself feel good and to have fun, I just was like, I'm going to go ahead, and because I'm working on some large works. And when I say large, it just means that there's a lot to it and a lot I'm going through. So those are going to be something that are going to be coming down the road. But I thought, until I get that done, I want to have that idea that I have created and actually published something physical, because of course it was in PDF form. But I love, when I read a book, I want to touch the tangible
Mhm.
pages, and I want to flip them, and I want to smell
Yeah.
the paper, and I want to be able to scribble on it in the sides and things of that nature. And so it's just really details, my basic, really just basic 4-step premise. You may kind of go through that one.
Sure.
Okay.
Um,
So the first part is to simply focus on your bliss. And what that is to really design, or in your mind, what is it that really, makes you joyful? And it can be really anything. It can be how you want your kids' lives to be. It can be the perfect vacation. It's like what you want your home to be like. It can be how you want to feel in your own soul. It's whatever kind of lights you up or trips your trigger. I mean, whatever that is. And the second part of that is to step into joy. And you notice each one of these has like an action step with it. And
mhm.
when I say step into joy, that is consciously becoming aware of the joy state. And what I mean by that is everything that we have is like a stick, and there's 2 ends of a stick. There's the fear side and there's the love side, and that's where you're going to find the joy. So it's finding the joy in things. Like it's raining. Oh, great. There's going to be some amazing flowers next week. And maybe it's sounding like you're being a Pollyanna, but you're just looking for that joy in every moment. And what happens is you start cycling yourself up to this state. Because at least for me, with the angels, the heavenly realms, they only live in a state of joy. That's the only state they were in. A Course in Miracles talks about how there are certain words that aren't even known in heaven. And I had never really thought about that. Words like guilt or forgiveness or judgment. These are words that are never spoken in the heavenly plane because they're not they're not necessary. They're just not, they can't even wrap their brains around it, I guess, if they have brains, right? So, when you step into joy, what you've done is you've taken yourself up into that space. You've taken yourself from your sympathetic nervous system into your parasympathetic nervous system. You've taken yourself out of your limbic, base reptile brain up into your cerebral cortex up there, and really tapped into, your spiritual connection. And I'm getting really excited as the angels are really
I'm
dancing on my shoulders right now as I'm saying this. So the third step into that is to take inspired action, because as you focus on your bliss and as you step into joy, you're going to start getting inspired to do things. And the thing of it is, some of those inspirations are going to be wacky. They're going to be what feels like off the track. It's going to be, go here and have lunch, or call this person you haven't talked to in 3 years, or who knows what it might be. It might be and it feels like it has nothing to do with what your bliss is, but you have no idea how to amend the crooked path of spirit as the straightest shot towards what we want. So the third step is to take inspired action. The fourth step is walking in faith. And what I mean by that is that when you take those inspired actions, you're going to have to walk in a space of faith. And faith is knowing without seeing. Faith is a complete understanding without a shred of human evidence to back it up. I always see faith as like this clear glass bridge that you step out onto without being able to actually see any support, but just knowing it's there. And that's the leading edge. That's the cutting edge. That's the exciting part of being spiritual in today's world, is that we get to do that. We get to step out into that unknown and that's why I was saying, I don't know that the bridge is even built until we step. I don't know. That's my latest question to spirit is, like, as quantum physicists discover the next newest, smallest, tiniest thing, was it there a second before, or did it get created as we just, did you understand what I'm saying? It's this really trippy world I'm in right now that I'm loving.
Did a tree fall? Because I didn't see it fall. No, I understand what you're saying. Am I creating this, or has it already been there? I mean, I think that we recreate things, but we never necessarily recreate them the same way.
Yeah. Well, I think that we are expressions of the divine. I think the divine is discovering itself in each moment, and that's the exciting part. It's like, and so I have this really weird idea of, like, God, you don't even know yourself, and that's really interesting and exciting to me. So that's like my latest sort of like question to spirit. Not that I'm expecting an answer, but it's just kind of, it's somewhere my brain is going.
We have physical bodies because it's a whole different experience, right?
Right.
And so they're living with us, in spirit. So
right. So with that book, you had asked me if I wanted to do any free gifts, and so the first 2 people that comment on this video, I will literally mail you a copy of the first 2 people. I'll mail them an actual copy of this 4 Steps to Brilliance for free. So that's like my free gift. And you can announce it again at the end. Since we were talking about it, I wanted to say it.
I really meant to mention it in the beginning, but I'm glad we got to it.
Uh-huh.
Where can they get a hold of you? Like, should they just write in thread, or should they message you on Facebook, or should they email you?
Facebook is one of the best ways to get a hold of me. Pete Cossaboon on Facebook. I mean, I do have PeteCossaboon.com, but really, with our crazy lives and everything, no matter where I'm at, no matter what electronic device I have near me, I usually have my Facebook open. You know what I mean? And so, Facebook is.
Meet me. I want one.
Okay. So there's one gone. There's one gone.
I'll put some links up in the thing, so if they can't get a hold of you on Facebook, we'll put some links to places that they can.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got really got 3 really exciting projects I'm working on right now that are really exciting me. One is there are really right now 48 angels that I work with. So I'm working on both the Udemy course and a book called 48 Essential Angels. I may change the title along the way, but it's basically, and my connections with the angels, my talks about the angels, my courses on the angels are different probably, or I like to think they are, than a lot of what we've read before, because basically the angels are bored. They're ready to get some stuff done, and the stuff is not the word they used, by the way. I kind of cleaned it up a little bit. They're just, they're ready to have an impact. They're ready to get going. And the interesting thing is that man's concept or connection with angels has changed over time. You know, when they first started appearing, they were seen as very fearful and perhaps very large. And they're right now is a time when, you know, and that was needed then, right? It was almost like people had to be frightened to get them to move into the next space. But we're now at this amazing space in our time, and this amazing space of expansion where they know that it's more about a sense of joining hands with us, and more a sense of camaraderie. I don't know if that's the right word. You know, more of a sense of a love relationship. You know, that they want to really, and it's not that they're all about love and peace and unicorns and rainbows, although, you know, that's perfect. They're also about hitting the rubber on the road, and just, you know, being aware and getting things done in partnership with us, you know.
I think
And
they
it's not
want to
about
unstick us. Don't they want to unstick us? I feel that the case they see such potential in our spirit and human body that they want us to just vibrate and expand.
oh yeah, they tell me all the time that, like, you know, we have a huge mansion right behind us filled with everything we could ever imagine and every servant we ever want, but for some reason we want to live in the guard shack with no plumbing. They tell me that all the time.
That's funny. I love
Yeah.
that because they have a language that speaks to you. And I always talk about how we have five senses to help us here on earth, but these extensions, or these senses are extensions, the way we see and feel and know and taste, and the way it affects our memories, and the language that is spoken to us is different for every person. I just wanted to mention that I was in a room with two other intuitive women, and something entered the room, and one who was a scientist saw a swoosh go by, another person who's a life coach saw a person walk in, and I saw an angel, and we saw the same thing in three different ways. I just thought it was amazing. Yeah.
And that's perfect. You know, I mean, and I think people judge themselves because, oh, I didn't see this, or I didn't sense that, or something like that. But no, you know, there's 7 billion of us on this planet for a reason, so that we can all, I see us as all a facet on a gem, and we all just refract the light in our own special way. Nobody else refracts it like we do, you know, and we get to just describe what we see, you know, in our own special way, right?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I'll say the other two works that I'm working on, one is called The Illusion of Reality, and it's about where spirituality and quantum physics are really meeting each other. I'm doing a lot of work with the 0-point field, which I call the angelic morphic field, because it's really quite fascinating. What they're finding in quantum physics is that the empty space has 10 to the 40 times as much energy as the filled space. So if you can imagine, like my hand here, the space around it actually has 10 to the 40 times as much energy as my hand does. So is this the matter, or is this the matter, right? And so what I see
Black
is
matter,
this,
right? Where they don't know anything about it, so they call black matter.
yeah, dark matter. Yeah, it's called dark matter and dark energy, which is basically
I don't know
96%.
anything about that. I'm just going to call it black matter.
Yeah. Okay. Well, makes up 96% of what's there, and we call it dark matter and dark energy because we really have no clue what it is. But to me, it's that morphic field, and basically it's like the angels create this sort of a pattern or a dye, or a mold, you know, that we simply fill in, right? Because we are, you know, when you look down at what quantum physics really is, we are simply disturbances in the probability field.
I love
So
it. You are really, I'm like, I can't wait to get this book out because it's like I'm already salivating.
yeah, oh, that's another big work that I'm working on. And the third thing, I'm actually going to a spiritual retreat this week, and I've been asked to speak on spiritual activism. And it's really interesting because somewhere in like the 80s or the 90s, I think spiritual people got this idea that politics and spirituality didn't have anything to do with each other, that we shouldn't be in it. But I think that we are called to be I think we're the ones that are the most able to really speak to way things should be and way things should happen. But it's a learned process of how do I stand up for my rights? How do I stand up for other people's rights and not step into hate and not step into rage, really, and lose love, because that needs to be the primary force that gets us through. So that's the latest right now thing I'm working on.
I think it's great. I think more people should be involved, even on the local level, because the system should be part of you. You should be part of the system and understand how things work and what goes on. And we need people to step into roles that really have heart heart feeling,
Yeah, and
really
we've been
understand how
trained.
to, yeah.
Yeah, we've been trained that way. I mean, I'm just going to step out on a limb and probably piss some people off, but the whole concept behind most organized religion, probably all of them, is about control. It has nothing to do with spirituality. It has everything to do with fear. I mean, if you listen to the language, now that I've gone through what I've gone through, and now I listen to people. I live in the deep South, and so I hear people's language, and I'm like, we're not given the spirit of fear, and all I hear from you is fear. That's all I hear from you. I don't hear a single bit of love coming through one single second, right? And so and when you start really, I've been doing some studying on like the Gnostic texts and the Gospel of Thomas and some other things like that, and it's really interesting how so many things have been edited. And I was reading today about how there's really so little written work about Jesus, and there's a great knowing that a lot of the works, a lot of his words have been destroyed over time. And I
Right.
think it's because they were words that gave self-empowerment, that gave power to the spiritual person who was connecting with spirit and who didn't have to go through the priest and didn't have to go through the church. Not that there's anything wrong with having a mentor, having somebody that helps you along that spiritual path, but any teacher, their main goal should be for you no longer to need teaching, or at least from you. Like
Right.
my goal, if I'm healing somebody, my goal, if I'm teaching somebody, is for you to no longer need me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
And
then I know I've done my job.
Jesus is really about the salvation within. I mean, that's really, if
Mhm.
you read the Gnostic text, that's what they say. And what I love about him is he's a fighter, and he was stood up against, of course, didn't
Did.
well, but
Yeah.
but he stood up against the government and the religion because he didn't feel that people were heartfelt. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the way I translate it. But yeah, so we need people to step up, and I think it's courageous of you to do that, to step into your truth and to really lead in that area. We need more leaders.
Hmm.
So yeah, I appreciate you. I'm the local person who goes to the town hall meetings. Oh no, she's back.
What's she gonna say in light and love now?
But you're right, it's hard to do that and not attach yourself to some of the energy that surrounds that action.
Hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. For
So
sure.
you had mentioned that you might want to pull a card for the writers.
I'm really getting the feeling to pull a set of four. I generally
Okay.
pull a set of four, and like I always tell people, the more specific the question, the more specific the answer. I think we'll just kind of be led by what happens. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
So what I do, and it's really interesting, is so I used to work with Doreen Virtue's deck, but I mean, just to be honest with you, Doreen Virtue's deck for me has died. So I was given, and anytime you're given a deck of cards, it always means more than if you buy it. So I was given this amazing set of cards. I hope I say her name right, Kimberly Maroney. She's not quite as well known, but you can find her things out there.
Oh,
And so I just get a lot of, right now, those are the current ones. I know that I have a deck of cards in myself that I'll be doing at some point. So that's just another another project. So we'll just kind of be led and see what happens. Okay. So
cool.
let me just give you
Awesome.
a second. This will be very exciting. But I was gonna say, I shuffle it one time and then I just kind of go through and see what happens. Hmm. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my gosh, I'm getting all these shivers on my shoulders right now. So I don't really look too much at who the angels are that come through so much as really kind of just the message. So the message is blessings, ministration, prayer, and unity. So
Mm.
it's just talking about, it's really at the end of it, it's talking about how we are in this mass union with ourselves, with each other, with spirit, and it really happens through prayer. It happens through us ministering to ourselves and to other people. It happens through the blessings that we've been given in every single moment. We've been given so many gifts, and so many people discount their own gifts. They're like, I don't have $10,000 to give somebody. But you know what? You might have 10 minutes to give somebody a call who needs just to hear something, or just to share a blog, or to, who knows, pet a cat. I mean, you have no idea what you do can affect the next person or the next being on this earth, or even just to sit for 20 minutes in silence and just, spread love out to the world, whatever it is, every single one of us has something in abundance that we are able to give out to the world. And the amazing thing is, as you give out of your abundance and not out of your lack, you will notice that everything else fills in. So make sure you're always pouring out from where your cup overflows, you know what I mean? So that you can have enough, to keep for yourself. And as you minister in that way, and that's can be a sense of prayer for you, then you're just going to have such an amazing sense of unity with yourself first, and then with others, and then with spirit. So
Awesome.
I think that was an amazing message. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. Because there's a happy balance sometimes. There's givers. I call them givers and takers, but really it should be balanced. It's about where can you give, when can you give, and then when should you receive. I think a lot of givers forget to receive, and then they turn it off. I'm stopping.
Yeah, and something I learned, I'm just going to talk, I always love to talk about what I just learned. You know what I mean? Something I just learned was that if you are feeling like somebody is taking advantage of you or something like that, it's amazing how sometimes if you will draw the line in the sand and then go tell this person or organization, they're actually waiting for you to do that. They're waiting for you to help them step up, because what you've been doing is you've been facilitating them. You've been keeping them small. You've actually been doing them a great disservice. But when you finally have had enough and you draw that line in the sand and you say, I'm going to stop giving out so freely, and I'm going to start expecting something in return, some amazing things can happen.
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's just about balance, right? I mean, I think sometimes people go outside to help because they feel it's going to fill their bucket, but then they wear themselves out. They have to remember to really receive and to recognize that that gift that somebody gave you cards, and it's a beautiful thing that somebody thought of you, and it's
and a lot of people wear themselves out like that, and that's their story, that's their excuse, right? That's their story for why they stay small, or how they're the victim. I'm always giving and blah 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 blah, and it doesn't make you a saint. It just makes you somebody that's self-abusing, really, at the end.
I agree with that. I feel, and I've been a victim of self-abuse for so long that I'm recognizing my body felt it, and I had to do something to really change that. You hit a brick wall sometimes. It's just like anything, and you say, okay, obviously I have to do something about this. It's unfortunate that you have to hit the brick wall before you recognize it. Yeah.
Right.
That's a beautiful message. I love that. Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, we've been going probably for about an hour now. We probably people a break,
well, that's
right?
okay. You have so much. I'm glad to give you this interview because you have so much inside of you, and you're always giving to other people, and you're always on the other side of the interview table. So I think it's wonderful, and it's an exciting interview. So hopefully people watch it and pick up some golden nuggets. I know I have. And I want to thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I hope, and I know that you'll inspire a lot of writers out there to think about some things that they can teach and bring to the world. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
About your new projects.
Yes, lots of them.
So we'll have you back. We'll have you back.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, thank you, everybody out there. Remember to always let your heart do the writing. This is Lesley Wexler signing off, and I'll catch you on the flip side.